The investment landscape globally has changed, and Africa is no exception, right? So I think the world has actually gone through a lot of challenges, especially from COVID, where you saw most of the world shrink in terms of investment in different infrastructure and in different growth. Africa has actually had the toughest of the lot. Things have changed, and if you see what's happened now, that the whole world has gravitated towards more social, environmental, and governance. So the ESG is a new buzzword, and this has actually shifted the investment landscape in Africa. So, and if you know, Africa is a resource-heavy continent where there needs to be constant investment in resources in order to drive a lot of infrastructure growth and social solve some sort of social challenges. So what has happened is Africa is being forced to respond to the ESG challenges globally. Africa has actually reacted nicely. I mean, I think there has been debt of liquidity sources, so we are not deceived that things like mining, oil and gas, they've seen a little bit of pushback on those investments. But Africa has actually reacted in a balance where we know that in order to continue to solve the S in the ESG, we need to continue to make those investments in those resources because the continent actually does derive, all the revenue sources to help the continent grow. What RMB is doing is creating a balance and saying, how do we continue to support Africa for Africa to grow, whereas being conscious of the future that these are the challenges that we're going to continue to face. We've seen continued investments in a lot of these resources and mining, but a little bit cleaner. So get into the clean coal technology. We create a balance in saying, how do we transition, from what we used to towards where we want to get to. So you talk of private power, grid, renewables. You also talk of trying to make sure that even companies that we support across the continent actually has a clear transition plan to how do you make it a little bit more balanced. Where a lot of the international investors have actually tried to pull out, RMB has been a big supporter of a lot of the governments, a lot of the companies. We continue to work with our clients in these transitions. We continue to work with them to make sure that we kind of meet the same goals where RMB also wants to create a more sustainable financing needs for Africa in the future. RMB is proudly African. We're very invested in ensuring that we're part of the growth story in Africa. We believe that in order to continue to grow as an institution, we need to continue to make the investments, across the continent. So RMB, we pride ourselves that we have a deal footprint that covers the continent. But we're particular about how we push our Africa growth story. We've been successful in markets like Nigeria, in most of the SADC regions, both Namibia and co. But we're looking to see how we expand our presence in places like East Africa, Western Africa, with the likes of Ghana. Our major focus has always been to be invested in what drives Africa. We're looking to how to develop a sovereign strategy where we support, African governments in actually harmonizing plans to see continued investments in infrastructure. What RMB is doing now is working with a lot of governments to make sure that we can continue to fund, their budget towards growing, the continent, and especially solving a lot of the social issues that we do have. And we've had a couple of successes in that regard. What RMB is doing, the plans is actually to fill the void that has actually been left, by a little bit of the pullout from a lot of the Western institutions that will traditionally be creating the support. We pride ourselves that a lot of these transactions were done during the COVID era. So if I look at transactions like supporting the Bank of Industry in Nigeria, who is one of the critical growth engines in driving, manufacturing and coal. I mean, we raised close to about $2 billion for the Bank of Industry with banking partners. And this is a testament that even in a COVID period, we were able to continue these challenges. We've also supported all our clients. I mean, also supported the Ghanaian government in one of their bonds, during the COVID period as well. But over and above, we supported the corporates. If you look at, we've had successes with MTN across the continent. We helped them with recent, liquidity raise in Nigeria. We've done things for them in all other parts of the continent, and we also continue to follow our clients in different footprints. We've had some successes with some of our clients in North Africa, where it's not our traditional footprint. But this is a testament showing how we have actually evolved as an institution while supporting our clients. I'm very passionate about Africa. I mean, Africa has always been part of my DNA. I've always been driven to drive growth in Africa. So my first job was to come back to the continent, and I've remained here for the last 15 years.